All right. This is where we take your calls and we go back to one Danny Segura. There he is. I don't know why you're pointing to the sky. You are not a gangster rapper.
You're giving me an intro, right? I expected better, Luke. Come on.
Sorry, I am not a master of ceremony. Real quickly, who do you like, TJ or Cody in the rematch? Dominic Cruz was here last week. He thinks Cody's going to take it.
I don't know, because I don't know how much the injury hindered Cody. I know it was a very big deal, and he was traveling, right, to get it fixed.
And TJ got dropped in the first round of the fight.
Yeah, he did. But I feel like TJ has more tools. Cody's primarily a boxer. TJ can mix things well up with kicks, and that's just a huge advantage. And we actually saw that in that fight. So I think it could go either way. They proved that they can knock each other down. They can hurt each other. But I think TJ has more tools to get it done.
I think he does too, but that raw power and athleticism. And if the Cody who fought Dominic is making the kinds of reads that he made in that fight and he brings that to the TJ fight, all bets are off. All right, let's get to these calls. We don't have a moment to waste. How were the calls this time?
They're really good.
I feel like the calls people love.
They keep going up and
you know
low.
what? Let's be honest. The tweets, they could be better. They could be a lot better.
They could be better.
But the calls?
But when you got the option to leave a call, I think most people would rather pick that than tweets.
We've got the PFL of calls and we've got the UFC. Excuse me, we got the PFL of tweets and the UFC of calls, right?
Yeah, I mean you can mouth breathe on these.
Yeah, we have the World Series of Fighting of tweets. Come on, tweeters. Let's get better at this. All right, let's get to these calls. Set this up, please. Let's get this going.
Cool. So the first one is about something a bit controversial that went down this weekend and last weekend as well.
Okay, let's hear it.
I'm Derek from Ohio, and my question is about eye pokes in MMA. With the last 2 weekends of fights just showing how beneficial they are, from the Paulo Costa fight to the Daniel Cormier fight, and referees just refusing to take points. I think Paulo Costa got like 5 warnings, and no point was ever taken. Is that a problem you think there is a solution to, or just something that will always be a problem in MMA? Thank you.
It will always be a problem. Thank you, Derek, for the call. It will always be a problem to the extent that penalties are not enforced. I'm not one of these big believers that thinks that the reason Cormier won was because he raked the eyes of Stipe, certainly not intentionally. And even if he did, and I'm sure that he did, and I'm sure that it hurt, and I'm sure that it affected him, but in the end, I would still pick a healthy Cormier against a healthy Stipe Miocic. But yeah, I fundamentally agree. Here's the thing. Go watch a college wrestling match. Now, I know some of you might be like, I'd rather have liquid Ebola chucked in my eyeballs. I understand. It's a sport not necessarily designed for entertainment. But just do me a solid. Pull up one on YouTube. Wait until March when it comes around. Here's what you'll find. You'll find the referees play an extremely active role in defining how that match goes. Now, I understand in a tournament they'll wrestle several matches. They have matches throughout the course of the year. You have these dual meets. You'll have these tournaments. I'm not saying that we need to empower referees to the extent that we empower referees in collegiate wrestling. Here's what I am saying. This whole where I'm going to be a wallflower and I'm not really going to get involved because I don't want to taint the purity of this contest, man. Please get rid of this old ass idea that needs to be jettisoned like a bag of urine from a Dave Matthews touring band. A bus. I mean, this is a old idea. Clearly, what needs to happen is some degree of proactive behavior on the point of on the responsibility of referees to get involved. There needs to be more action. Now, I understand we have a bunch of referees who are really bad, and you could say, but they could ruin it. I get it, but they're already ruining it by not getting involved, by not taking points, by not. I think, frankly, we should have more stand-ups, to be perfectly honest with you. Certainly at least more separations when there's clinching along the fence line and people aren't doing things. How we enforce that, we can debate. Exactly the contours of how we put this together, we can debate. But I actually believe, Danny, I am not at all in favor of this idea where the ref shouldn't be involved at all. That's exactly how you get somebody who just, it may be inadvertent. I don't know that Paulo Costa is a cheater, but you could exercise a greater degree of responsibility in these fights. I absolutely believe 100% we need referees more involved in fights, not less.
Yeah. And as soon as the referees start taking points off, you'll see less cage grabs, less eye pokes. And I don't necessarily think somebody's out there doing it intentionally, but just keeping the hand out there, you might not want to risk it just because you know you might get deducted a point.
Yeah.
So the refs need to be on top of it.
On it. I want them
I think you should get one accidental warning if deemed that it was an accidental eye poke. You should get one warning and that's it. Yeah. And you tell them next time it's a no-go.
I'm even fine with them going at the beginning of the fight. Like if it's a main event or something, the referee going backstage will say it's Herb Dean, so it's before the fight on camera. They do this on HBO all the time. You'll see the referee, whoever's the referee in the main event, he'll go backstage and he will say to those two jokers, here's what's going to happen. You do X, I'm going to do Y. You do Y, I'm going to do Z. Whatever. So that they know. So you go out there and you start putting your hands in his face, man, they already know. I do not mind. Take a point. Yeah. Get involved. Push the action. I'm in favor of it.
Yeah, for sure. And I think maybe in MMA, the refs should be a little more lenient just because, in boxing, you have the whole glove, so it's almost impossible to poke somebody in the eye.
Yeah, but there's headbutting, clinching. There's all kinds of ways to cheat in any kind.
But it's easier to get an accidental eye poke.
But there's two major problems. One is taking points for misconduct, again, intentional or not. And the other one is for stalling. Yeah. I am absolutely in favor of getting involved for people who are stalling. And I know that's controversial. I know a lot of people are like, I don't agree. I don't care. I have watched way too many martial arts and way too many combat sports to say, well, we should just sort of let stalling work itself out naturally. Man, fuck that. Get involved.
Yeah, if nothing's happening, call it. All right, so let's move on. We didn't touch on the tweets about some of those stuff that happened over the weekend, so let's track back on that.
Let's do it.
So this is about Chad Mendes.
Okay. Oh, good call.
My name is John. I'm calling from New Jersey. I'm curious about Chad Mendes. I'm wondering what the UFC does with him next. I mean, is he eligible after being suspended to fight for a #1 contenders fight, or does he have to work his way back up? Is a fight with Jeremy Stephens something that we should look forward to after Jose Aldo, or is Stephens fighting for #1 contender? That's what I'm curious about. I'd like to see Chad back.
Okay, I mean, we get it. I mean, he's just kind of rambling at that point. It's a great question, actually. Appreciate the call. So here's what I would say. Well, first of all, Jeremy Stephens is a savage, but he's got his work cut out for him against Jose Aldo. Let it be known right away. But if he gets past it, maybe you can make that Chad Mendes fight if you wanted to. I thought that win over Miles Jury was super impressive. And what I really took away from it was, look, the whole psoriasis cream thing, look, I'm not a pharmacist, but the pharmacist I did talk to told me that was not a plausible explanation. I went over this extensively in my live chat. But you guys also know my opinion about performance-enhancing drug use in sports. I think we had the World Cup happen over the weekend. You see what they announced? There wasn't a single positive test at the World Cup. Yeah, it must be because no one's using, right? No, everyone uses in that sport and nobody cares. It's the same thing in basketball. And you can say whatever you want about the dire consequences of performance-enhancing drug use being involved in MMA, but this is what happens when you treat fist fighting like a sport. The realities of trying to eradicate or control it are no less easy. So you're still wrapped up in the exact same harms and problems that come about with anti-doping in track and field as you are in MMA. You cannot eradicate it, and to control it, you necessarily have to cause all kinds of harms, not least of which is total invasion of the lives of athletes and getting other things wrong. Now, getting back to Chad Mendes, maybe he used, maybe he didn't. The psoriasis cream thing does not seem to me very convincing, but I don't really care that much that he used. And especially because he did serve out his 2-year sentence. To that point, I thought he showed no signs of physical drop-off. I thought that characteristic power was right there. I thought his speed was right there. Beating Miles Jury is absolutely no joke at all. It just depends where he gets ranked. And I don't know where they're going to put him, Danny, but there wasn't a whole lot of tape. Maybe his cardio will fade if he goes into a longer fight. There certainly were some issues about his ability to take punishment coming out of that Frankie Edgar fight. He got iced with that clean, was it a left hook, I believe? If I'm not mistaken, whatever it was that put him down. Maybe those issues are still in play, but they were in play before the break. They would not go away, even with time off. They just wouldn't be exacerbated. They would just be status quo. My whole point is, let's see where they put him in the rankings. But the major takeaway for me from Chad Mendes was, what an exciting reintroduction into the UFC's featherweight division. I was so glad to see him back. I was so glad to see him look like that. I feel bad for Miles Jury, who I know has been trying to climb the ladder for a long time. But that was stupendous. What a win for him. Welcome back, Money Mendes.
He looked fantastic, and the division needed that because there's been so many, young guys coming up that perhaps, they're very skilled but don't have a huge name value, don't have a bunch of history. Chad Mendes is still game, and he's got tons of history, so you can make pretty big fights with him. So I would just like to point out, Cub Swanson's fighting Renato Moicano pretty soon.
August 4th at UFC 227.
I think the winner of that would be perfect for him.
Great call. What's next?
All right. So let's go Sage Northcutt now.
Ooh.
Team Alpha Male.
Hey, this is Big M from Big I, Big Mike from Indiana. Couple of quick questions. First, your thoughts on Chad Mendez's performance. I felt it was pretty hesitant up till the big shot landed. Just kind of your thoughts on that and what you might see him doing next. And two, what about Sage Northcutt? Do you see him as ever being a true contender or more of a perennial stable in the undercards? Thank you.
Yes. Hashtag mouth breathers. So real quickly, the last thing he mentioned about Chad Mendes was he did look hesitant. Well, right. He's been off for 2 years. I would expect some degree of hesitancy on his part. I have no real issue with that. And once he got going, he was cooking. So that's that. About Sage Northcutt, well, it's an interesting question. People keep asking, what's his ceiling? What's his ceiling? None of us know. If you want to have optimism about it, by all means do it. Here's what I would say. Rather than asking about his ceiling at this juncture, it's not like a John Jones where like they come out when they're 21 years old and they're just blowing the doors off these top-ranked guys. That's when you can begin to ask, wow, what really is their ceiling? This is much more an incremental climb up the bottom of the ladder. So it's not necessarily crazy to ask, well, how many rungs up the ladder is he going to go? It's just not the most appropriate question now. To me, that was a big deal for Sage Northcutt on Saturday, because the question is, well, is he just going to be a perennial staple of the welterweight division? That's not nothing. And by the way, a few fights ago, I wasn't even sure he was going to be able to do that. I didn't think he wasn't. I didn't know if he was. It was very much up in the air. That fight against Zach Otto taught me, yes, this guy can hang around. At a bare minimum, he can hang around. But the upside, you ask that question this moment when they're out there beating the Shoguns of their division, when they're out there beating the Ryan Baders of their division. That's not what he's doing. He's climbing that ladder very, very incrementally, one rung at a time towards the bottom, and he's trying to work his way up. That's still huge progress. We're so used to the Khabib Nurmagomedovs who come in and just blow the doors off people, the John Joneses who come in and just blow the doors off people. Sage did not come in blowing the doors off of people. He came in, I think, having some stumbles, changing weight classes, changing camps, figuring things out. Now we have a baseline, and that baseline is, can he compete in the UFC's welterweight division? Yes, he can. Can he beat ranked opposition? I don't know. I'm curious to see. I'm curious to see his development, because I think those guys at Team Alpha Male are doing something pretty special with him. But Danny, this is my point. You can't ask these questions about upside until you know much more about him. And I know he's been here a little while, and he's been in 2 divisions, and he's been fighting at big cards, UFC 200 and the like, but I like that they put him in Boise. I like that he's at welterweight. I like that he's at Team Alpha Male. But these are foundational changes. These are not catalysts for the top of the division.
Yeah, something I was very critical of Sage Northcutt because I didn't think he was living up to his hype. But again, the kid is just 22 years old. I mean, I'm older than him, So you don't know,
wow,
you don't know how he's going to look in the next few years. I mean, in 3 years, he's still going to be a kid. He's going to be 25, So he's got so much potential that's yet to be seen. And we'll find out what he really looks like in the next few years. But as you said, he's doing everything right. He's with a really solid team, a team of veterans that can really shape him into a really good fighter. And on top of that, he moved up a weight class. He talked about how bad it was moving to getting down to lightweight. So he's doing everything right. And so far, he's looked great.
I have to say, when he got rattled and hung on, I was impressed. When he got past and didn't panic, and then he's got these he's got the real Ronnie Coleman bicep where he actually has the 2 heads of the bicep you can see, and that's fine to look at, but it doesn't do fuck all for you in a real fight. To be quite honest with you, you're not out there doing isometric holds or strict bicep curls on a cable machine. Like, you need functional muscles.
Yeah.
And most functional movement comes in compound lifts. Anyway, neither here nor there. The point being is, he's got the beach muscles, but this time he showed me the right kind of balance and the right kind of strength for the functional positions. Frank Trigg used to argue Matt Hughes might be stronger than me, but I'm stronger in functional strength. I don't know if that was true or not, but there is a difference between the two. It used to be for me that Sage had good gym strength. Now I'm starting to see he's got that gym strength translating to all of those scramble positions and defensive guard positions that he needed before. Plus, dude, when he gets people up against the fence, his hand speed, whoa. This is what I'm talking about. It's foundational. Let's see what he can build upon now that he's starting to put these things together. And I think lay off the kid. He's not John Jones. He's not. But that doesn't mean he can't be something special, but that doesn't mean he's going to be either. Let's see.
But so far it's pretty promising. And I would say in this fight, it's the most improvement he's done from fight to fight. I mean, he looked really, really
The biggest issue for me for Sage Northcutt was that if he had a game plan and he could stick to it and it spoke to his existing strengths, he was fine. But if he got out of that game plan or he had to use something that wasn't a strength, he'd be kind of screwed. He showed me that that wasn't true on both counts.
Yeah, and you want to see prospects go through adversity. You want to see them get rocked.
Absolutely.
How they react. Cool.
Keep playing them. Play these calls.
Let's go to Tough, your favorite show, right?
I couldn't tell you anything about it.
Hey, Luke. This is Edgar from Houston, Texas. Loving the show. I had a quick question about Tough, the world-renowned and world-known Tough. Season 28 just got announced. We have Robert Whitaker versus Kevin Gastelum. I haven't watched Tough since season 11 or maybe 10 or so. I was wondering, let's say they said, okay, we're doing our last Tough, season 29. It's going to be DC John Jones. Would you tune into that? Or do you think we should just let it die at season 28 when the Fox deal's over? Or would you say, hey, let's put DC, John Jones in a room together every day. Let's see what happens. All right. Love to hear your thoughts on that. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you for the call. Shouts to Houston. Good people there, by and large. What? Well, I mean, there are miscreants in every town, I suppose. But generally, Houston's a wonderful place. I covered one of the Kimbo fights there, so it was pretty good. What I would say is I would probably tune in a little bit, or I would catch replays or highlights that made it on social media. I don't know that I would do much beyond that, because what really I'd be caring about is the fight itself. We know that we know their interactions would be poisonous, and we know that it would be ugly, and we know all those things. Some of that would be fun to review, but that's not a reason to keep the show alive. You can just make the fight and put together some other kind of separate series. In fact, I think some kind of programming innovation is due. Remember when the ESPN deal was announced, they promised some innovative programming that would be announced at a future date. What better opportunity to do that between maybe two of the best fighters ever, with maybe the best rivalry ever in MMA or certainly UFC history? So is it a reason to keep that corpse running? No, it's not. Would there be some value if they did? I suppose. Any objections to that?
I agree with that, but I'd like to piggyback off his question and ask you, would it serve? Because everybody's been talking about how Tough needs to change, how it's no longer draw and all this.
Yeah, it needs to be changed. It needs its throat slit.
Do you think it's worth it to bring it back every now and then, though, when there's a really heated rivalry, say John Jones DC? Do you think then it's worth it? Because it might not be worth it for a guy like Stipe Miocic and Daniel Cormier, because you're not going to get any sound bites or anything crazy out of that. Is it worth it to keep around to throw in, I don't know, every 2 years or something like that when there's a really good rivalry?
I don't care.
You don't think so?
I don't care at all.
You're done with Tough?
I'm done. Yeah. It had a great run. Don't get me wrong, but I'm done. It did.
Historic.
Super done.
All right, let's move on.
Okay.
Now we're going to go merge a little bit of UFC and Bellator.
All right.
Hey, this is Mouth Breathing Mike from Connecticut, and I just
Again?
wanted to ask, what do you think the likelihood is of Brock Lesnar eventually competing for Bellator against Fedor Emelianenko in the fight that the UFC was never able to make? Does Brock's contract with the WWE allow him to compete in MMA, or only the UFC, and who do you think wins that fight nowadays? Thanks.
Couldn't tell you much about his contract because I don't pay attention to that kind of stuff. But certainly he'll be allowed to compete in UFC. I would imagine if Bellator or Viacom threw him enough money, they would probably put that on pay-per-view. but I don't find that as likely. He's, 41 years old now? He's going to make a boatload of money fighting Daniel Cormier. I mean, never say never. I never thought Mayweather would fight McGregor in a boxing match. So this is a sport and not merely in MMA, but in combat sports generally, it's a side of sports where the bizarre and the unusual come to life and frankly have great purchase over our attention. But I just don't see that as overly likely. So is there anything necessarily prohibiting him? No, I don't think so. Is there anything necessarily enticing him beyond what opportunities presently exist? Like, where could he make the most money? You can make the most money in UFC. Where can you get the most high-profile fights? The Fedor one would be interesting, but generally speaking, it's in UFC. The interesting part about that, though, Danny, of course, is that there's no USADA in Bellator, which makes Brock a better fit for that if we're just being candid. But whatever, the big money is in UFC, and I think
Do you think that fight's still big? Because like in 2010, that would have been huge. Now, given Fedor's,
when you say big, define big.
I mean, Fedor's definitely towards the end of his career, and he's had some tough losses. Let's say if he goes out there and loses to Chael Sonnen, and then he doesn't look good doing it. Obviously, Brock Lesnar would be a huge mismatch. What would you say then? Do you think it's still a big fight, good enough to promote?
You know what's funny? Tito Ortiz is 43. And Tito versus Chuck is sort of considered, a past its due date kind of fight. I think it will still do well, but, you've seen the belly aching out there from parts of the community. We talked about it on this show. Brock is 41, and I don't think he has quite the drawing power that he once did. But at the same time, you think, like, what's the difference between being Brock at 41 and Tito at 43? And there's, like, drastically different reactions to them while they're still belly aching about Brock. The answer is that Brock takes long enough absences to still feel fresh-ish. Not fresh. You kind of smell the milk. It's like, it's still good enough to drink, still good enough to put in your coffee.
You might get a stomach ache.
Yeah, you might, but you don't need to go to the store, right?
Yeah.
You don't need to go out there and do that. It's that kind of a thing, I think, with him. And so his absence, heart grow fonder, I don't know, but it doesn't damage his brand as much as constantly overdoing it. Now, Chuck has been gone a long time, but Chuck's concerns were so medically related that's been a little bit different. Plus, what is he, 47 or so?
Yeah, 47.
He's long in the tooth. So, again, would Bellator do it if they could? Sure. How much would it sell on pay-per-view? I don't know, 3, 4, maybe 5.
Really?
Yeah, I don't know. 5 seems high, but maybe 3 or 4.
I agree.
That's all you have to say when I'm done.
So I'm gonna get the next guest. So I'm gonna play the next question.
Okay, and you're gonna get our
take
next
care
guest?
of that, and then I'm gonna get the guest.
All right, let's do this.
Okay?
Play the call.
Hey, MMA Hour, it's Yofi from Israel. I was wondering, hi Luke, hi Danny, I was wondering, asking you guys, what is the most MMA ever fight that makes you the most emotional, like you were crying, screaming, in MMA history? Thank you, love the show, bye.
Now, I didn't get where he was from. I couldn't tell if his accent was French or Japanese. And I don't know if that's racist or not. Oh, well. Here's what I would say. He's from Israel? Okay. Somewhere in between, I guess. If I can just be totally candid with you, I've had a number of those moments, but the biggest one I ever had to be, without a shadow of a doubt, it had to be Brock Lesnar versus Shane Carwin, for sure. Heading into that, my heart was like beating out of my chest because you just had these two, and I mean this not as a pejorative. I mean this in the greatest way a man can say it. You had these two gorillas at the peak of their powers, and I know Shane ultimately had the cardio issues and Brock had the comeback, but when he was, go back and watch that fight. Shane Carwin brought the thunder. He lowered the boom on Brock Lesnar. I was like, there's a famous live blog of me where I did it, and it's like the super embarrassing live blog because I'm like, LOL, OMG, like a teenage girl reading Tiger Beat in 1995 or something. I couldn't believe how just what an epic beatdown it was, and then the shots were landing so hard, and then for the comeback in the second round, and the arm triangle wasn't even all that great. He just kind of He-manned it. That to me, I've never lost my breath before. I needed a cigarette when that fight was over.